Okay, so now let's take a much closer look at productivity. We just talked about the difference between GPP and NPP. So let's look at how this actually happens within an ecosystem. So what's important to understand is that we can measure productivity in multiple ways. Remember, productivity means photosynthesis, okay? So how can we measure how photosynthesis is actually happening, or how well is it happening? Well, we can look at the inputs and the outputs of the process itself. So the first way that we can look at productivity is the amount of CO2 used. So the amount of carbon dioxide used by plants. We can measure that. Another way is the amount of oxygen produced, because plants produce oxygen during photosynthesis, so we can measure how much oxygen is being produced. Also, what's another big component of photosynthesis? Glucose, okay? So we can measure the rate of glucose production. All right, so if you're asked in any way on the test, how can we measure productivity, any one of these answers is going to be correct, all right? Now, this graphic does a really good job of showing the difference between primary and secondary productivity, okay? So you've got the gross, it's going to show the gross productivity, and it's going to show the net productivity. Okay, so let's start over here with the primary productivity. So we have the gross primary production. Remember, gross is going to be the total amount of photosynthesis. Remember, this is what your paycheck would be if you didn't have taxes. All right? And in this example, we have 300 joules of energy. All right? Now, remember, in order for us to calculate the net primary productivity, we have to factor in respiration. Okay? So the net primary production, here is our NPP. Okay? And remember, NPP is equal to gross primary productivity minus respiration. Okay? So if we know that we have 300 from right here, primary productivity, we know that 100 joules are taken out in respiration. What's 300 minus 100? Yep, 200 joules. It's simple, right? You just plug the numbers in, it's simple subtraction, okay? So the net productivity would be 200 joules. Okay. Now, the other way we have to look at this is when there's these 200 joules that are available for consumption, okay, where does it actually go? When an animal eats a plant, where do all these numbers end up going? Okay, so we can look at what's called the secondary productivity. Okay, so the secondary productivity, I'm going to write the definition up here at the top. The secondary productivity is the total energy assimilated just scoot myself over a little bit. There we go. It's the total energy assimilated by consumers Now, assimilated means it's taken into the body and it's used to make things. Usually it's going to be a protein or a nucleic acid. Okay? So, no, hold on. Sorry guys, I got interrupted there by another teacher. Okay, So we were talking about secondary productivity. So it's the total energy assimilated by consumers, okay? And what this is, we can measure this from fecal loss. What's fecal loss? Yeah, poop. We can measure this by poop, okay? So this is from the mass of fecal loss. Okay. All right. So, we have gross secondary production. So here we have those 200 joules that entered into the caterpillar when it ate the leaf. All right. So here's our feces. That's our poop. Okay. There's cellular respiration. All right. So the gross secondary production, so it's GSP, gross secondary production is equal to the food eaten minus the fecal loss. Okay. The net secondary production right here, the net secondary production is equal to the gross secondary production minus respiration again. Now, let me give you guys a tip here. Typically on the IB test, they're going to focus more on the primary productivity. So being able to do these types of equations is what's going to be important. They will talk about this a little bit. I can't guarantee that you'll be doing any calculations on this, but you should at least be able to explain it. Now, why do I need you to know that this is important? Is because typically on the IB test, they want you to compare the gross primary productivity between ecosystems. We're going to be getting into ecosystems in the next unit. But if one ecosystem has a higher gross primary productivity than another one, that tells you that there's probably way more producers within that ecosystem because there's more photosynthesis. Okay? So I'm going to write a star down here. So you need to be able to compare the GPP, or the gross primary productivity, in different ecosystems. Okay? All right. Let's look at the next page. So, what are some potential negative effects on food chains? I'm going to zoom out here. Nope, not in. Out. Okay. So, certain fertilizers, certain pesticides can have very harmful effects on food chains. And they cause two specific things to happen: bioaccumulation and biomagnification. All right, they're not the same thing. There is a difference between the two. And so IB wants you to know one very specific example. And that example is DDT. Now, I couldn't tell you what DDT stands for. It's some super long chemical. But DDT was a pesticide. It's a pesticide to kill mosquitoes. We currently do not use it anymore because it was determined to cause these major impacts on food chains in the United States. A lot of countries still use it. Several countries in Africa still use it because it kills mosquitoes that carry malaria. but we don't use it because it's actually quite dangerous to humans as well. All right, so let's look at this. So DDT is sprayed on water. Now, why is it sprayed on water? Well, that's where mosquitoes are born. Mosquito larvae are born out of water. So the mom mosquito lays the eggs in the water, and that's where the larvae are. And so then they develop from that point. Okay, so when you have DDT in the water, all right, it gets absorbed into the actual cells of what's at the bottom of the food chain, so the plankton. Okay, so the phytoplankton absorb it into their cells. Okay, then we go up the food chain. The fish eat the phytoplankton, the bigger fish eat the smaller fish, and then we have an osprey or an eagle all the way at the top. Now, what you see over here are the actual numbers of DDT. This is what we call biomagnification. The numbers increase as you go up the food web. Okay, so look how little we start with, and then look what we end with. So this is showing you that DDT magnifies. It gets bigger as you go up the food chain. And the reason it magnifies is because of bioaccumulation, where that DDT basically gets trapped in the cells and it can't escape. And so DDT just keeps getting added more and more up the food chain. And that's what bioaccumulation is. All right, so let's write down these two definitions. And I'll go back to this picture of the eggs in just a second. All right, so bioaccumulation all right, bioaccumulation is the buildup of non-biodegradable, meaning it can't go away, the buildup of non-biodegradable toxins within an organism at each trophic level. So again, that DDT gets absorbed into the cells of the organism. And that's what causes, so versus biomagnification. Okay? Biomagnification is the increase in concentration of non-biodegradable toxins in a food chain. Okay, this refers to numbers getting bigger. This refers to it not being able to be excreted out of cells. It just stays in the cells. Now, why did this eventually get banned? Was because of this right here. So these are bald eagle eggs. All right. What was happening with the bald eagle populations in the 70s and 80s? They dropped drastically. And so bald eagles became very heavily endangered. And that's our national symbol. So we can't have anything happen to our national symbol. So what was discovered is the DDT was causing the eggshells to become incredibly thin and fragile. And so when the mama would lay the eggs and then go to sit on them, they were so fragile that they would just collapse and get crushed under her weight. So once we made the connection between the eggshell thickness and DDT, DDT became banned. So our bald eagle numbers have since rebounded very well since then, so they're no longer endangered. So I hope that you guys enjoyed this particular unit. We're going to be moving on to weather next.